I'm Rudy Palma. I've titled my presentation Breaking Social Isolation Among Seniors. For this project, I thought to address a concern I already know something about, which is not discussed enough, which is isolation among older people and the adverse negative effects it can have on their health and quality of life. I believe breaking this pattern of social isolation for seniors to be something more social workers and concerned citizens should be engaged in. When we look at the literature, we can see the profundity of this social problem, and I can't emphasize enough how quiet a social problem it is because it exists in the shadows. The advent of COVID lockdown made a whole bunch of us see that it was there, who might not otherwise have noticed. Certainly, loneliness and isolation aren't ever good, but they have particularly negative effects on older people, and you can see some of the ill effects on their health: heart disease, obesity, cognitive decline. The National Institution of Health noticed that, and they're still continuing to research this, exactly how this affects us all, but a combination of social isolation and loneliness, which are different and very distinct things, but when they're combined, because you can feel lonely without being socially isolated. You can be socially isolated even though you're not lonely. But when they're combined, they can have very negative effects, particularly for older people, as we can see. Mutual benefits between generations are lost when older people are shunted aside, as they so often are in American society. And it's a youth based world, and older people are marginalized and really need each other. And sometimes that happens when a spouse suddenly dies prematurely or unexpectedly, or children or family live out of state. Maybe a friend dies. Maybe your friends are older than you and they pass away. And what do? Or perhaps your job was your identity and was your full social network. When you retire or are forced to retire, what do? It can be very painful for some people, including ones I've spoken to. So when I was in my first internship, Gifts of Gab, this is what I did. I spoke to many clients for about 30 minutes a week. And it was an approximation of therapy, I would say. I learned how to be a therapist from doing this, even though it wasn't therapy per se, it was de facto therapy. But I experienced many mutual benefits of talking to these lovely people who simply needed someone to talk to, and they had genuine appreciation of our services. And it helped me to learn the difference between simple isolation and depression and grave mental illness, which a couple of our clients had, and they really weren't appropriate for the program. The collaboration among everybody on staff, volunteers, foster mutual learning for all. But it was also, since some of the cons were that it was difficult to determine criteria for admittance. We didn't want to turn away anyone. There are not enough volunteers sometimes to meet the demand, which made it kind of ironic that we were told when we sent grant writing in or tried to advocate to get money to continue the program, that we were told that a need had not been demonstrated properly. I beg to differ. And that made painful transitions for clients and volunteers alike because there was no program to continue, so we couldn't simply transition most of our clients onto someone else. So there were some tearful goodbyes. It was just not a very good thing. But the state of New York decided that we had not met the criteria. And we also noticed we were able to transition some clients to Dorot, which is another very worthy organization that helps seniors out in many different ways, including with delivering meals and things like that. They do wonderful, wonderful work, but they only serve aspects of New York City and Westchester County. So that left most of our clients not able to be transitioned. And there's a program called Age UK in the UK, of course. They have a program called Call in Time, which is very similar to what we did at Gifts of Gab. If they can do it, why can't we? That's my question. So I decided to write to Senator Vitale, Senator Joseph Vitale, via regular snail mail. I underscored some of the economic values of remedying this problem and talked about my experiences with Gifts of Gab and how effective and necessary and uplifting the program had been, and how it really was on a relatively low budget that we were able to operate it. Um, I'll follow up via email after the holiday. Um, and I know that the senator has a track record of caring about social justice issues. He has a track record of sponsoring and co-sponsoring bills to protect the dignity and quality of life of seniors. So I think these things are a good thing. I know he has a lot on his plate, but this is important. And I think that this is indeed a kind of advocacy. Not all kinds of advocacy are about marching in the streets or about political endeavors. Those things are very important. But this is the kind of thing that affects real people, and it's often forgotten about. And that's the kind of thing that we need to do. We need to lift up people who are on the margins and may not be able to speak for themselves. I noticed that a lot of people had some skepticism when I brought this up, which is kind of odd because we've done this before already with Gifts of Gab. We can see in the UK they have a program just like this. It's puttering along just fine. Um, and there were some that were bewildered that this is a problem because they never thought of it, I suppose. And others that felt like their intelligence was insulted because, of course, it's a problem. I think that a lot of that depends on how many older people are in your life and how much you value them. Um, you might not know about it because you're not thinking about it, you don't know about it. But I think that if I had done things differently, if I'd had more time than simply doing this in our program, I would have worked with a social work agency. I do not have an affiliation with one currently because my last internship completed a few weeks ago. Um, I would have worked with an agency or other social workers to pool resources and create teamwork to actually really, really get things done in a more dynamic way than just writing a letter. I know it's something, but it's not enough. I would also maybe work with our founder, Katie of Gifts of Gab, again. And I still would in the future, but right now she has, I believe, a 2 or 3 months old running around, or I don't know what they do. I know she's working very hard right now, chasing after this baby, and trying to be a good mom for the first time. So not bothering her right now. Baby's first Christmas, that I know. I don't really know anything about babies, but speaking with local seniors might have been a good idea as well, just to get their viewpoints on what to include in the letter to the senator. And of course, I thought of designing an infographic. Sometimes that is a better way to get information transmitted effectively, but I did not go into social work to become a graphic designer, and making the one infographic I made in the past nearly killed me. But this is, again, what we're talking about with teamwork. If somebody's a good writer, they do the writing. If someone is a good graphic designer, they make the infographic. And if somebody's really good at marketing or advertising, they spearhead that. That's why it's really good to work with a team. Thank you for listening.